Hi, and welcome to Stamp with Ginny. Today I'm going to share with you how I made the template for circular stamping on my Stamparatus. This one here happens to be using the large layering square die, but today I'm going to show you how to make a 3-inch square. So let me set this aside and we'll get started. The first thing you're going to need is a 6x6 piece of window sheet, and I happen to like this 6x6 size because it's large, it's easy to set your magnets on and work with. You could also use vellum if you would like. So you're going to need a Sharpie, and the first thing I'm going to do is slide this over to the corner of my grid paper. And if you don't have grid paper already, this is a wonderful tool for stamping, not only for this technique but for just stamping in general. And I'm going to use that grid paper, and I'm going to mark on the 3-inch mark on the bottom and the side, and then I can flip that over so that the two sides that don't have the little tick marks are lined up against that corner again, and repeat. Well, what this is doing is giving me a focal point. So when I slide it over here to the center of my grid paper, I can set those two little tick marks on my grid paper, and I can see exactly where the center is. At this point, I can take my ruler and put it on that line and run my Sharpie to connect those by running it along the edge of the ruler. And once again, I'm going to do that and run the Sharpie. I happen to be using a fine point, but you don't have to. You could use the large end also. Now what that does is give me 4 equal squares on my window sheet. So I'm going to set that back on my grid line only because it makes it darker so you can see it better. And then I'm going to take my template. This happens to be a 3-inch square that I simply cut on my paper trimmer. And the first thing I'm going to do is line this up. Of course, 3 inches, the halfway point is 1.5. And the great thing about this grid paper is these are 1/4-inch blocks. So I can simply count 4 blocks to give me 1 inch, and then another 2 blocks gives me a 1/2 inch. So there's my 1.5-inch mark. And I can do the same on top here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 gives me 1.5. So I know that is centered. And then I'm going to take my Sharpie and I'm going to trace my square. Okay, so I have my square on there, and I can sharpen up those corners if I want to so that it's all the way, simply by adding a little bit here. Okay, and now the next thing I'm going to do is turn my square and put the points on that center axis line. For better terms, I'm not a mathematician, but that gives you an idea. What I'm trying to do is create a centered diamond. So you can do that by counting. I've got 1, 2, and a little over, 1, 2, and a little over. This part is a little bit more eyeballing, so I want to make sure that I've got the 1, 2, and a little bit over on all 4 sides. And then once again, I'm going to trace my square. And this is simply going to give you your cutting lines. And of course, you can create this template in any size you want it. And now I have my template so that it's on my window sheet and I'm ready to cut. Can you see that? How about there? Okay, so I am simply going to take my paper snip and kind of poke a hole in the center. Being careful not to get myself, and window sheets are tough. So once I've got that in there, I can cut up to my point and then continue cutting. Now I have found that for me, cutting on the inside of this line is better than cutting on the line itself, because the Sharpie adds a little bit of width, and that way when I cut my paper or cardstock to the 3x3, it fits well. If you go a little bit over, it's okay because this is just going to be a guide. So you're going to continue cutting all the way around. Okay, and that last little snip is going to remove that piece from the center of my window sheet. And I have let me put this under it again so that you can see, and I have that shape. And this is what we're going to use on our Stamparatus. I do like to notate what size this is, so that makes cutting your cardstock easier, of course. So I'm simply writing 3-inch square. Now you can use the same process for your framelits also, like I showed you in the beginning here. You're just going to use your framelit and run it through the Big Shot instead of using your Sharpie and drawing it on. To use this template, watch for my companion video, Circular Stamping with your Stamparatus.